What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the review space. In this video, we're going to take a look at the top 100 video games by Metascore. This is a list on ListChallenges.com, and I'm going to be taking a look at the top 100 titles, video games, according to the Metascore, which is basically from Metacritic.com. So, according to Metacritic, somebody assembled it. I think the person is, well, whoever arranged it. It's added by Sean Morris. And this one has over 4,600 views, but it only has an average score of 30%. So we'll see how, not necessarily, I mean, how accurate it is. I don't want to say accurate because it's just based on opinion, but it's also just based on critic score. But we'll see if these critics were, on point with their scores. And this is according to Metacritic. These are the highest 100 games list according to the Metacritic.com Metascore. So these are critical scores accumulated in the way that they aggregate everything, and and of course it says right here, how many have you played, which is the whole challenge aspect of it, and we'll see. We'll find out how many of these titles I've actually experienced. So, how many have you played? Coming in at number 1. The top 100 video games by Metascore. Number 1 is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Okay, this is the N64 title. I used to have this on the N64 back when I used to own the N64 many years ago. I got the N64 way back in the late 90s, and I got this game back when I was in high school. Actually, I got it quite a few years late. I acquired it from a high school acquaintance. He wasn't even like a buddy of mine, wasn't even like a close friend or anything like that, but he was somebody that I knew from, I think it was PE class. For some reason, well, was it PE class? I don't even remember now, but somehow he gave it to me. He gave me a copy of Ocarina of Time, and I played the game years earlier, though, back in the 90s, and I actually got a chance to own it, to actually, have a copy of it and possess the game pack and everything, and Ocarina of Time is one of the better N64 games. A lot of people kind of, I think they overrate this game a little too highly. I wouldn't say that it's the most overrated game of all time, but it's certainly one of the more, people give it a lot of lauded critical scores. A lot of people give it high praise. And for my opinion, I think the game it's not a bad game. It's definitely one of the better titles for the 90s generation, the late 90s era. And it was a pretty darn good 3D version of a Zelda experience. It was a pretty cool 3D interpretation. The way that they created the world and everything was very much a Zelda experience. And I enjoyed the heck out of A Link to the Past back in the game that came on the Super Nintendo in the early 90s. I thought that one was one of the best games of all time. That's my favorite Zelda game ever, was A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo. So Ocarina of Time is a really good game. I wouldn't include it in my top 10 or in my top 20 even, top 30, maybe top 50 100 games of all time, and even that is kind of iffy. Like I would probably include it in my top 100, but just not that high. It's a really good game. The music is good. The gameplay was pretty good for back then, but I feel like over time, of course, the graphics got outdated, but it's not really the fault of the, I mean, you can't disrespect the graphics too much or criticize it too much for having outdated graphics, because that was the standard for that time, for the late 90s. It's just that I feel like Ocarina of Time is a good game that gets super high praise because it's Zelda. It's got the Zelda label attached to it, and it's from Nintendo, so a lot of Nintendo fanboys will overrate the heck out of it. And it was a good game for back then, but I've played so many better games over the years, especially during the PS2 and the PS3 era, so in the past, 15, 16 years, that Ocarina of Time seems a lot more of the past. Like, it's a game that hasn't aged as well. Not even as well as A Link to the Past. I think A Link to the Past was more, there's a lot more 2D charm to it. The animation looks better, the graphics look better, at least to me, because I love that Super Nintendo overhead point of view, you know, that top-down point of view. I love that. And, you know, A Link to the Past really was almost a perfect action-adventure game. One of the greatest action-adventure games of all time. But Ocarina of Time, I felt, was... The controls weren't the best. The graphics, again, look really kind of muddy. Even back then, it just looked kind of lame. And the characters, I just was not a big fan of the Zelda characters themselves. The, you know, Link and Zelda and the fairy and you know, all these different characters. I think Ganon was like the only cool character in that whole franchise. Or in the entire game, I should say. Ganon was pretty cool. So, but he was the bad guy. He was the villain. So, you know what I'm saying? That final boss fight was kind of cool. But overall, I just felt like, as a game itself, it gets way too high of a praise. The water temple was frustrating. I did get stuck on the water temple, so I think that's part of my frustration with it. I just thought that was really irritating and annoying, and I just didn't... It got to a point where I didn't want to play it anymore. I didn't want to play Ocarina of Time anymore, and I was like, man, this is just a waste of time, you know. So it is a good game, though. It's almost like a Resident Evil 4, where so many people give it such high praise and such high scores, but at the same time, it's like I can see the flaws in the game. I can see the flaws, I can see the problems, I can see that this is not a perfect game in any way, shape, or form. But it is a very good game that did a lot for the genre, the action-adventure 3D presentation. But there's just other games that I prefer much more over Ocarina of Time, that have better presentation, that have better gameplay. You know, games like a God of War, or God of War 2, or, you know, those kind of titles that have more excitement. Maybe even something like a Devil May Cry. Of course, the Grand Theft Auto series. You know, those games I think have more value and more... they're better. They're just overall better, well-made games compared to Ocarina of Time. So Ocarina of Time, I would not include it as number 1, but according to the Metascores, it's the highest rank. So I think it's also because there's a lot of Nintendo fanboys out there that just play this game, and this is like the best that they have. You know, not every Nintendo gamer or not every Nintendo fanboy likes to play other systems, but they also don't own other systems. You know, Nintendo is all they have. Whether it's N64 back in the day, you know, they didn't have a PS1, they didn't have a Sega Saturn, they didn't have a Dreamcast, they only had an N64. And even continuing into the modern day, they only had a Wii or a Wii U or a Nintendo Switch. So that's all they really know. So they have very limited experience outside of the Nintendo systems. Alright, so coming in at number 2. Number 2 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. I don't remember playing this game. I have a few of the other Tony Hawk games, like a Project 8, an Underground. I think I also had Underground 2. What's the other one? American Wasteland was another one. Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. So I had a few of the Tony Hawk games, but not the earlier ones from the Pro Skater franchise. But I heard a lot of good things about it, and yeah, you know, it's one of the more influential, really, like sports games, whatever you want to call it, sports games, skating games, that kind of genre, and it influenced and impacted it a lot. So you got to give that some respect. And but again, I really don't have much experience with the actual Pro Skater series. I think I played the Game Boy Advance, one of the Game Boy Advance games from the early 2000s back in the day. But that was a very different experience. All right, but as far as it being ranked number 2, you know what? I'm sure it was like a really highly critically acclaimed game back in the day, back when it came out. But as far as it being number 2, though, I mean, of all time. I feel like there's other skateboarding games that came out, you know, like a Skate 3 and, you know, Skate 2, like other skateboarding titles came out. And the fact that it's like the second highest ranked Metascore scored game of all time it's a little much, it's a little hard to digest. But then again, at the same time, my experience is, pretty much non-existent when it comes to Pro Skater 2. So I can't really say, well, it's the best. It's the second best game of all time, or the second highest. So I wouldn't include it in my list, obviously. But I don't know. That one's a tough one because it's almost like that was a high score. It's one of those games that got really high scores back in the day, but over time they just kind of like they romanticize it almost. They look back at the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 as like, wow, it's still amazing. You know what I mean? People still put it up there, even though there's other games that came out that could probably easily knock this game off its off the score list. Like there's games that should have had a higher ranking. The fact that this game is number 2 though is just mind blowing. So, it's just the way it is. People tend to romanticize the past a little too much, I think. It's almost like they don't see games that might be a little bit better or might be a little bit more improved, and they don't rank it as high as the past. It's like, oh, that initial experience, like, what if Pro Skater 3 was better than Pro Skater 2? What if Skate 3 was better than Pro Skater 2? And people just kind of put Pro Skater 2 on a pedestal, and that's like, it is what it is. They kind of look at the past as the best, even though later installments or later games in the same genre might have eclipsed it in other areas, in graphics, in music, in gameplay, etc. But because Pro Skater 2 left such a big impact, they kind of look at it as like the pinnacle. And it's ranked number 2, which is absolutely crazy. But hey, we're talking about Metacritic here, so you know how Metacritic is. They that's Metacritic. It's the critics, it's the people that are not necessarily the casual or average gamers, or just the general fan base, the general gamers out there. It's usually the people that are running magazines, people that are usually in charge of like websites and things like that. The people that are the critics, these so-called critics that have so much money involved with it's from Activision. Activision is a very rich company, very wealthy company, so they have that marketing ability to thrust games like Pro Skater 2 out there. Activision will put out Call of Duty and Pro Skater and all these other franchises, and kind of shove them down your throat, so you kind of know that they're out there. So they're always in the psyche, in the back of your mind. They're always thrust into your consciousness. And maybe other games like maybe a Skate 3 that are not under the they don't have the same marketing power as Pro Skater 2, as the Activision brand, but at the same time, it's a highly influential skateboarding game. So coming in at number 3. Number 3 is Grand Theft Auto 4. Grand Theft Auto 4 is overrated, and this is one of the reasons why, is because it gets ranked so high. It's a problematic game. It's got a lot of flaws. I did include it in my top 30 PS3 games, but it wasn't as high ranked as number 3. It's a very good game by itself. It has glitches, it has issues, it's not perfect, and it is a pretty enjoyable title. Good voice acting, likable characters for the most part. Some of the voice acting is pretty bad, like the Jamaican guy I thought was really annoying. And some of the music is okay, not as good as Vice City. The gameplay is pretty good. The sniper mode is really awesome. I love the sniper mode. The graphics back then for the time was pretty good. It's a little bit dated now. But so overall, GTA 4 was an enjoyable experience. A very lengthy campaign, a long storyline, and everything. So you definitely feel like you're playing an epic experience. But I wouldn't include it as number 3 of all time. Even I don't care if it's according to Metacritic, Metascore. What I'm saying? And number 3 of all time, it's a little too damn high. And this is why people say GTA 4 is overrated. This is why. It's ranked number 3. Like, that is an insane number. I can think of many other open world games that can rival it, and it is even more fun. The Saints Row 2. The Saints Row series, I think, is a much more enjoyable and more fun game series, especially a game like a Saints Row 2 over GTA 4, and they came out in the same year, 2008. GTA 4 came out in 2008, Saints Row 2 came out in 2008. I enjoyed Saints Row 2 a heck of a lot more because it was more fun. The missions were more fun. It was a lot more satirical, and it took it a lot less. It was more comedy oriented, but you can tell they were having fun with it. It was way more of a parody and more of a satire and way more comical than in GTA 4. And there was a lot more customizations in Saints Row 2. So I feel like a game like Saints Row 2 is way more fun than GTA 4. So the fact that GTA 4 is number 3 Metascore is, I just do not agree with something like that. And again, this goes back to the marketing. Just like with Activision and its games, GTA 4 has the Rockstar appeal, the Rockstar marketing, the Rockstar mainstream commercial exposure. Rockstar has developed this cult following. It's almost like Nintendo, right? Rockstar is almost like a Nintendo thing where if you're a fan of Rockstar, it's like they just love anything that Rockstar puts out. They'll give it high scores, high praise. GTA 3, GTA Vice City, San Andreas, GTA 4, GTA 5. And pretty soon you can bet your butts GTA 6 when that comes out, GTA 7, GTA 8, and so on and so on and so forth. They're just gonna keep giving it perfect score after perfect score after perfect score, just like with Grand Theft Auto 5. They just give it perfect, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out, and it's this fanboy mentality, which I absolutely cannot stand. I think it is so ignorant, and it's so pathetic, and it's so very disingenuous, and it's a horrible mentality to have. It's a horrible, pathetic mentality to have. That fanboy, I love Rockstar, I love GTA. They just love the brand. They just love the brand. Even if the game is problematic, even if the game has issues, it has glitches, it's not the perfect game. So the fact that it's ranked number 3 of all time is insane to me, but that's what it is. That's the fanboy mentality. Okay, so number 4. Number 4 is Soul Calibur. Wow. Soul Calibur got a lot of high praise when it came out in the late 90s for the Dreamcast. As a Dreamcast exclusive, it made the Dreamcast worth checking out. It was very different from any other fighting game. In many ways, it was the pinnacle of 90s fighting games. It was a 3D game, so it represented a relatively newer genre compared to the older 2D style of like the old Street Fighter 2 games and Mortal Kombat 2 and all that 2D flat gameplay. Soul Calibur was 3-dimensional. It had what is that sidestep system, the great gameplay. The controls was very simplistic but very fun. The multiplayer was really enjoyable. The music and the graphics were great for the time. So Soul Calibur is a classic fighting game for sure, and it left a really good legacy. In many ways, the first one is the best of its kind in terms of impact, influence, because you notice like the later Soul Calibur games never really changed apart from adding a few things here and there. Added some limited customizations. They added of course the graphics got a little bit better over time, but the core gameplay is pretty much very similar to the original Soul Calibur, which really was in many ways a spiritual successor to Soul Edge, or sort of a continuation of Soul Edge from the mid-90s. So in many ways, Soul Calibur was Namco's masterpiece and Namco's greatest game. Although I'd like to think that technically other Soul Calibur games are just technically better, because then you have better graphics, then you have more customization options, and you have more characters with a Soul Calibur 5, or even Soul Calibur 4, or even something like Broken Destiny on the PSP. The later Soul Calibur games are just technically better versions of the first Soul Calibur. So I don't know if Soul Calibur would still be. It should still be number 4, and this goes back to when I was talking about with Pro Skater 2, is that people cling on to the past and look at the past as like, wow, that game got really high scores, so it should always be ranked the highest or whatever. It should always be at the very top. But Soul Calibur did get really high scores when it came out. I mean, again, it was considered a perfect fighting game. You know, one of the most perfect games of 1999. I believe it came out in 1999. And it was arguably the game of the year of 1999, you know what I mean? It was the best game of 1999 to some people, and one of the greatest games on the Sega Dreamcast, and one of the greatest fighting games of all time. So it's hard to argue against Soul Calibur. I just feel like in some ways, again, this is the past scores sort of coming back, and like it's like it's an old game that is outdated at this point. So it's like I'd rather suggest Soul Calibur 5 or Soul Calibur 4 or Soul Calibur Broken Destiny on the other consoles, and even something like a Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube. You know, like try those games instead of the first one, because the first one, as impactful and great as it was, you have the better versions of the later installments because they have updated graphics, they have the slight additions like a customization and more characters, you know, different new characters here and there. So, you know, Namco just kept making Soul Calibur, but just it's like, you know, just newer versions of it basically with the later installments. So why not get the later installments instead of clinging to the past of the first Soul Calibur? You know what I mean? From the late 90s. As great as it was back then, it's a little bit outdated now. Okay, coming in at number 5 is Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii. This one came out on the Wii. I mean, Mario always got high scores. I don't know about Mario Galaxy. I don't care about Mario anymore. I have no desire to play it. Aside from the older games from the past and stuff like that, I'll still play like Mario. I think Mario 2. I have that on the Game Boy Advance. That one that came out on the NES, and. You know, Mario Galaxy, I just don't care, you know what I mean? I just do not give a crap about the newer Mario installments, you know what I mean? Like, I just do not care anymore about Mario because it's for children, it's for kids, it's for a smaller audience. I never really got into the Wii. I don't care about the Wii. There's only a few titles on the Wii that I really was interested in. Games like No More Heroes or what's the other one? That black and white one, which I'm forgetting right now. The black and white game. Anyway, I forgot about that one. But so there's a few titles on the Wii that seem really interesting to me. But Mario Galaxy is not one. Like I don't care about Mario. I'm not a child. I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want to play kiddie games. I don't want to play children-oriented platformers. I'm done. It's not that I don't like platformers. They were a great part of my gaming experience as a kid back in the 90s, but it's like as I got older, I want more adult-oriented and more mature games that's not catered to little children and little, you know, babies and infants and small kids and toddlers and, you know, just young audiences. I don't care about Nintendo platformers for children. So being ranked number 5, I'm just not interested in Mario. So, you know, I don't care. Number 6 is Super Mario Galaxy 2. The same thing can be said. You know, I don't care much about Galaxy 2 either. I have no interest in Galaxy 2 or the first Galaxy. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that liked it, especially Nintendo fanboys, but I don't care. I'm not interested. I don't want to buy a Wii to play Mario Galaxy. Like, even if I had a Wii, even if I had the consoles, and even if I had, what is that? I think the Wii U has backwards compatibility with the Wii, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, I just don't give two-ish about it. Like, to me, the Galaxy series is a platforming series or a platforming franchise that is meant for children and small kids. And that's what it's for. It's like Disney. I don't care about Disney. Disney is for kids and little girls. Nothing against little girls or little kids, but it's not for me. I'm 30 years old. I've been through the Nintendo platformers. I've been through Mario back in the day. I played Mario when I was a kid on the Super Nintendo, on the N64. I played it on these old platforms, and I played the Banjo-Kazooies and the Banjo-Tooies and all that. I played that old school experience, but now I want something that is more mature, or at least something that's more gritty and interesting and different and unique. I just don't want Mario. I am sick. I am so sick of Mario. It makes me want to vomit. If I'm going to play anything Mario related, I'm going to play the older Mario games because that's what I loved when I was small. Mario Brothers 2 or Super Mario World. I like those games. And, even something like a Super Mario RPG, even though that's not a platformer. But you guys get the point. Yes, I did like Mario when I was young, back in the 90s. But guess what? It's not the 90s anymore. I am an adult, and I play adult games. Doesn't mean that I play not every single game that I play is rated M for mature. I'm not saying that every game that I have or every game that I like is for adults. I do like the occasional sports games here and there, the occasional non-violent game or whatever non-mature game. Not everything has to be God of War or Devil May Cry or Grand Theft Auto or an FPS with a lot of shooting and all that. But at the same time, I don't want kiddified mascots anymore, because I can only take so much of that. I can only take so much of that. Number 7 is Grand Theft Auto 5 GTA V. I enjoyed it in the PS3. I thought it was a good game. I included it in my top PS3 games. I would include it in the top 7 of all time. I mean, again, this goes back to the whole overrated franchise thing, where GTA is severely overrated as a franchise, as a series. Every GTA game gets super high scores, super high. Everything is perfect, 10 out of 10, etc. Yada yada yada. And then you play the game yourself and you realize, okay, it's a good game, but it's not perfect. It's not a perfect 10. There's a lot of different flaws in it. But GTA 5 is a good game. It's a solid title. It's a good experience. And I do suggest that anybody check it out. It's a fun game. It's for, even little kids. Little kids should play something like this. Even though it's really meant for adults. It's got that strip club joint, for example, where you have these, you got the bare naked women that's dancing in front of you doing a striptease. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's appropriate for young, small kids, but to each his own, you know what I mean? Good gameplay, good third-person open world experience when you're driving around the city and all that. Very fun. Exploring the cities and the different environments, the massive world of GTA 5. And the missions themselves are, you go through the mission. It's just, you go through the mission. It's a long campaign, kind of like GTA 4. So GTA 5 is a good game. I would not necessarily say it's, number 7 of all time, according to Metascore, but it's one of the top games, top 30 games on the PS3 for sure, because of the quality involved, the amount of things that you can do, the strip joints for I like that. It's eye candy to me. It looks good. The graphics are pretty good, and the voice acting and the characters are pretty good. Like, they're kind of likable characters. You know what I mean? And it's just a well-presented, well-made game, and I like it. I just this idea that GTA always has to get perfect scores is kind of mind-boggling to me, because I can't see myself playing GTA 5 continuously. I'll play it, I'll beat it, I'll defeat it, and finish the mission, and then I feel like, okay, that's it with GTA V. I don't want to touch it anymore. After a while, like I don't want anything to do with Grand Theft Auto for a long time, because it's like I've had my fill. Like, enough with Grand Theft Auto already. It's fun, but it's not super fun. It's not as fun as Saints Row. And I keep going back to Saints Row, because Saints Row, to me, especially Saints Row 2, is more fun than the Grand Theft Auto series. It's more fun. The missions are more fun. Okay, number 8. Number 8 is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, another Tony Hawk game. So pretty much everything that I said with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 also should apply to Pro Skater 3. You know, I don't want to necessarily overblow the Pro Skater thing. Yeah, I think it's just, yeah. Alright, so moving on to number 9. Number 9 is Perfect Dark, the one that came out on the N64. I really like the first Perfect Dark. You know, I played it back in the day on the N64. I never owned it, but I borrowed it from my friend back in the early 2000s. You know, he had all these great games, and I would always bum the N64 titles from him because you know, I didn't have much N64 games back then. I never really owned a lot of titles, but I played a bunch of them by borrowing, you know, titles from people that I knew at school. You know, some of my friends at school had the N64, and they had some really good games, so I got an opportunity to play them as well with my system. So Perfect Dark was a really good FPS. It's one of my favorites of all time for sure. I haven't played it in many years. I haven't played it since I was in high school. So probably grade 9. Probably around, I want to say 2001, maybe 2002. So it's been many years, but I still remember it because it's a very fun game. I mean, it really was a very enjoyable single-player experience, and I enjoyed it a heck of a lot more than GoldenEye. I thought GoldenEye was severely overrated, but Perfect Dark had better graphics, better presentation, and I like the weapons more, and I like the characters more, and the overall campaign and the story was just superior. So Perfect Dark overall was just a much better game than GoldenEye. And I feel like games like Time Splitters and all that, Time Splitters 2, Time Splitters Future Perfect, they are sort of like spiritual successors or follow-ups to a Perfect Dark. Like, they kind of share a similar, you know, they have the same style, the same, you know, a similar gameplay, the same lineage in many ways. So Perfect Dark was a very good game. I miss it. You know, I wish I still have a chance to play it. I don't wish. I got rid of my N64 a long time ago, so I don't wish that I still have the N64. But I wish I have Perfect Dark, the actual game, available to play on, you know, on the PS3 or something like that. PS3 or Xbox 360 or even the PS2. I wish I have a version of it somewhere. Yeah, you know, that's very basically faithful to the original N64 version. It's I just remember it being a really fun game to play. Maybe because it's the past, right? You know, and I was a lot younger back then, and my experiences with video games was a lot less back then. I had a lot less experiences with FPS when I was younger. So I think around the time I was maybe about 14 or 15 years old. So I wasn't as well versed in FPS titles. You know, back then there were no CODs, there were no Battlefield Bad Companies and Kill Zones and Time Splitters. I don't remember was around back then. At least not the second or the Future Perfect version. So there's a lot of you know, Rainbow Six Vegas 2. You know, these titles that I ended up loving were really not around. You know, there were early versions of that. Like, I love Unreal Tournament 3, but Unreal Tournament 3 wouldn't come out until like 2007 or, you know, somewhere around that time. There was Unreal, you know, the early Unreal games, but that was like late 90s or around the same time. But, you know, they were kind of different. Yeah, they were like, you know, they had the lesser graphics. They had the late 90s graphics, and, you know. So Perfect Dark was a really fun, enjoyable FPS for me back in the day when I had very little FPS experience. You know, I didn't play too many FPS games at that time. But that was the best FPS title that I've ever experienced up to that point. Since then, I've played many other great FPS first-person shooters, like like a Cold Winter, Project Snowblind, and Black, and Urban Chaos, and all these different other titles over the years, Crisis 2, Crisis 3, and so on and so forth. There's so many, I can't even remember every single one of them. So, as good as Perfect Dark was, maybe it goes back to the whole nostalgic thing that you know, rose-tinted nostalgia glasses, where my memory of it was so good, but that was at a time when my memory of FPS was not as... I didn't have that many experiences to begin with. I was very young. So maybe I hold Perfect Dark in such a high regard because I was so young, and that was one of the few titles that was so good. And now, like, you know, if I compare Perfect Dark to maybe something like a Rainbow Six Vegas 2, or Unreal Tournament 3, or any of the other FPS games that I really enjoyed, maybe it's not as dope, it's not as fun, it's not as great. So, you know, maybe that's a part of it. Maybe it's just because I, you know, getting older and acquiring more experiences with other FPS titles. Perfect Dark might not be as good, but it's still one of my favorites of all time. You know, I still have fond memories of it, and I still look at it in a positive way. I still look back on it like, whoa, that was a fun game. But Perfect Dark being ranked number 9, though, that's very surprising to me. That's a very surprising thing, according to Metascore. Not so much that, you know, oh wow, why is Perfect Dark on here? But rather, like, out of all the first-person shooters that we've seen over the years, like, Perfect Dark is still, like, number 9 highest-ranked game on Metacritic. Like, that's a little crazy. That's a little, like, mind-blowing to me. You know, it was a good game when it came out, but I guess I'm just glad that it's not frickin' GoldenEye. Alright. Number 10. Number 10 is Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime, I have this on the GameCube. I never really played it that much. I feel like the gameplay it's basically just a 3D version of the Super Metroid, the Metroid 2D series on the earlier systems, you know, Super Nintendo and all that, the 2D games. And those games are really fun. I wish that they created a 2D Metroid. I know they did it for the Game Boy Advance and everything, so that's fine. But I wish the GameCube had a really big Metroid game that was like 2D, like a Super Metroid. I love Super Metroid. Super Metroid is my personal favorite Metroid game of all time. I love that game. So for that to be, you know, the highest ranked, not the highest ranked, but for Metroid Prime to be the highest ranked Metroid game of all time, it's a little too much for me. I feel like the only reason why this game got such, like, super high scores is because, you know, it was a 3D Metroid game, you know, and people were looking, and people were waiting for a 3D Metroid game since the N64. The N64 never got it, and so when it came out on the GameCube, it's like, oh wow, holy smokes, like, holy crap, finally we got one. And it's like, it wasn't impressive to me. When I played Metroid Prime the first time, I was not impressed. I was like, it's okay, you know, it's alright. You know, it feels like a 3D version of the Super Metroid 2D game, you know what I mean? But it wasn't necessarily good, because I felt like this is not how it's supposed to be done. Samus is a little too, like, methodical, and this is supposed to be a first-person shooter. But it operates more like a platform, not a platform, a little bit of platforming, a little bit of, like, you have to aim a certain way. The way that you aim and the way that you shoot at the enemies and stuff is too much like the Super Metroid, like, 2D experience, where it's like you gotta use the shoulder buttons to aim a certain way, and I just thought that was, like, ridiculous. Metroid Prime should have been more like an FPS, but not like Super Metroid, the 2D platforming pseudo run-and-gun shooter. It shouldn't have been like that. Like, you know, like the Metroidvania kind of experience where you're swinging and all that, and you're traversing through the platform-style levels, and you're jumping a lot, and you're shooting at enemies in a more strategic kind of way. Metroid Prime was very similar to that, but that shouldn't have been Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime should have been a very fast-paced FPS, a first-person shooter with a little bit of platforming elements, but it shouldn't have been so slow. And that's what I hated about it. It was a very slow game. It was too sluggish, and it was a lot. You felt hampered down. You felt a lot more hampered down in this game. I felt like they really tried to recreate it, but it wasn't good. They tried to recreate the 2D experience into a 3D experience, but it wasn't done right. It was really boring. I thought Metroid Prime is a really boring title, and that's the problem. They didn't improve upon the experience. They actually made it worse, because now you have a 3D game where it feels like you're exploring, but you're still doing the sluggish exploration and all that, which is really garbage to me. You know what I mean? Absolute trash. Metroid Prime should have been a faster game, more first-person shooter oriented, a little bit of platforming, but done correctly, done really fast-paced, kind of like what's that? Bionic Commando, the Bionic Commando game that came out on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. The one, the 3D one, the one with the long-haired guy, and he's got the bionic arm and all that. It should have been kind of like that, where he's swinging from the the platforms and all that. He's swinging from the buildings and stuff. That should have been what Metroid Prime. That's what Metroid Prime should have been. Is that your character should have been swinging really quickly, going from platform to platform. I felt it was just way too sluggish and way too slow. Number 11 is Grand Theft Auto 3. This one I never played, so don't really have much experience with it. It's ranked number 11 though, so you know how Grand Theft Auto is. This was the beginning of it. This was really the beginning of GTA being a super ranked every single year, every time that it comes out. It's perfect 10, perfect 10, perfect 10. This was the beginning of it. GTA 3, and Rockstar becoming this having a cult like fanboy following. Almost like Nintendo, like they have these blind followers where every game that they put out, GTA 3, San Andreas, Vice City, GTA 4, GTA 5, Perfect 10, Perfect 10, Perfect 10. Grand Theft Auto 3 was the beginning of that on the PlayStation 2, unfortunately. Even though it was very influential, I give it a lot of credit, but, it's Grand Theft Auto. I think there's better open world games that came out, like a Saints Row. Number 12 is Halo Combat Evolved, the first Halo. I liked it on the original Xbox. I still have it. I enjoyed it when I played it the first time. Played through the campaign. I thought it was really enjoyable. It was a fun game. Number 12, though, is kind of high. I wouldn't rank it quite as high as number 12. But this is according to Metascore, again, the Metacritic scores. Halo was really good. The graphics were good. The gameplay was pretty fun. The storyline was alright. And the enemies were pretty fun, and the stages were pretty good, like pretty cool environments to explore. So overall it was a very enjoyable, like big campaign, like single player campaign. This was a good game on the original Xbox. I feel it is slightly overrated, I guess. It's not as overrated as other games out there, but it definitely is highly ranked, where it's like people look at it as like the end-all be-all of first-person shooters. At least before Call of Duty came out, like Halo was number one in every... Halo. I remember when Halo was like the biggest thing on the planet before Call of Duty, so it was really weird. Like Halo was... everybody talked about Halo like that was the number one franchise in the world, and I was like, wow, like really? Halo? Like there's other good first-person shooters out there that's just as fun and just as interesting, but the first Halo Combat Evolved was a very good game for sure. I mean, I quite enjoyed it, but being ranked number 12, maybe it's a little high, but I can understand why. On the original Xbox, it was very impactful, and it made the original Xbox, it put it on the map. It put Microsoft on the map as a capable, video gaming platform, and a video game giant in the industry that's able to compete against the Sonys and the Nintendos of the world. Number 13 is NFL 2K1. It looks like it came out on the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast got a bunch of great games. 2K1 I heard was really good. Just never really got into the whole football thing. I'm not a big football fan. I'm not really a football fan at all. I'm not an NFL fan in any way, shape, or form. I did enjoy NFL Blitz for the N64, but that was a long time ago. So I never really got into the 2K series. 2K1, came out way back in the day on the Dreamcast, though. I heard that the Dreamcast had some really, really good NFL games, because that was like, they focused on it, you know what I mean? It was a big focus for them. It was something that they wanted to prove that they can, it's like we got a great sports series like that, It was a reason to get a Dreamcast. As far as it being number 13, again, I'm not a football fan, so I don't care. Even if it's number 13, I just don't care. I have no interest in playing the NFL games. Number 14 is Half-Life 2. Got this on the original Xbox. But of course, it's like the PC, it's like the PC is the best, the PC version, get the PC version, it's the best, PC, all that. But I enjoyed it in the original Xbox. The original Xbox is a pretty darn good system. It got Half-Life 2, very good game. Good graphics, good gameplay. It reminds me a little bit of like how like Halo is in that, or maybe not even Halo, like a Metroid Prime, in that people just love Half-Life. People just love the franchise. They just love it, and they'll give it a high score no matter what. But Half-Life 2 is a legitimately fun, single-player, first-person shooter. It really is, and there's a lot of variety in the enemies and the stages, and the different abilities and the weapons. It's a fun game to play. And the storyline isn't bad. It's just that, I don't know, maybe, over time, maybe it's like it's fallen off in some ways, just because it's like it's been so long, and there's newer FPS games that came out that's even better. So it's like Half-Life 2 was good for the time, it was great, but after a while it's like, okay, there's other games that's better. There's other titles that's more enjoyable than Half-Life 2. But I think for the time when it came out, it was fun. I just didn't fall in love with, the trees didn't move, the trees and the leaves, they just kind of stood still. They didn't have that physics of like in other games where the trees would sway and the grass would sway in the wind. Half-Life 2 doesn't have that. They look like cardboard cutouts that just just 3D models of a tree that's just stationary. It doesn't move at all. So maybe that's like certain aspects like that, certain stupid things like that really get to me. Like I noticed that and I go like, ugh, it looks dated now. You know what I mean? It looks a little bit outdated. But Half-Life 2 was good. I still enjoy it. It's one of the best original Xbox games for sure. Number 15 is Out of the Park Baseball 2007. I don't care about baseball. Not interested in it, so I have no idea. Don't care. Number 16 is BioShock, the original BioShock from, I think, 2007. Great game. You guys heard me praise about it. It's one of my top games of all time on the PlayStation 3. Amazing title. Incredible single-player experience. Love the graphics, like the characters, great voice acting, pretty cool storyline, and great environments. The weapons are cool. It's like, this is one of those FPS that I'm talking about where, like, BioShock, I take BioShock over Half-Life 2 any day. Any day. Love BioShock over Half-Life 2. So I would include BioShock probably, I don't know, because I haven't made a list yet of, like, my top 100 games of all time. So I don't know where BioShock would rank in. I'll probably make a list one of these days, but BioShock would be up there. It might be in my top 10 of all time. It might be in my top 10 of all time. If not, top 20. It was a great game. And I know some people say, well, BioShock is overrated. BioShock is overrated. I get it, I understand it, but I wouldn't say it's overrated. I thought it was fun, because everything about it was great. The enemies were cool. They were really menacing and intimidating and interesting. The voice acting was great. The graphics were great. The characters were cool. The stage environments was great. The gameplay was fun. The weapons, the abilities and weapons were cool. The puzzle solving was pretty cool. Like, it was pretty difficult sometimes, and it was fun to play. That's the thing. It was fun to play. It was enjoyable to play. I can play BioShock again and enjoy it all over again. You know. I'm sure that in the next 10, 20, 30 years, BioShock is going to feel outdated. It's going to be like, oh, that was the past, and even BioShock now, it's like 10 years old now, you know? So I can understand why some people would be like, it's not that great. I get it, but I love BioShock, man. You know, I really quite enjoyed it. Now, I wish more games were like this, where they take so much effort in creating this great single-player game, especially when it comes to first-person shooters. There's really not a lot of those games anymore. Everything is either multiplayer, and everything is focused on like the online multi. You know, so the original BioShock, I thought, was one of the best games of all time. Number 17 is GoldenEye 007. You guys know how I feel about this. One of the most overrated shooters ever. One of the most overrated games of all time. Probably the most overrated game on the N64. And, it made me dizzy. This game made me dizzy. I felt like I was gonna throw up every time I played this, and I would play this multiplayer with friends back in the late 90s. Back in the day, I'd go over to my friend's house. He has a copy of GoldenEye. We'd play it with 4 people. We got that four-way split screen, 4-player split screen back in the day, and it just was a kind of an annoying experience. I did not like it. I like Perfect Dark a heck of a lot better than GoldenEye 007. Again, this is a highly ranked game because it was influential. It influenced first-person shooters. It influenced the multiplayer FPS console experience. And I get it. I understand why it was important. I understand. But to me, when I played it, it wasn't that freaking good. I used to have this on the N64. You know what I mean? And I barely played it because I thought it was so lame. I didn't like the graphics. I thought the graphics looked terrible. I didn't like the characters. I was not a fan of James Bond. I don't care about James Bond. James Bond is an old franchise. You know what I mean? That's an old movie series from like years, like decades ago. It's like Grandpa's franchise. You know? I don't care about James Bond. Damn. Number 18. Number 18 is Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. I'm surprised Uncharted 2 was number 18. I'm very surprised. It's a good game. It's my personal favorite out of the Uncharted series. You know, I liked it better than Uncharted 1 or 3, but number 18, though, that's really, really high. I'm really surprised. It's a solid title on the PS3 for sure, and it's one of the better exclusives on the PS3, but holy crap, number 18 of all time? That's pretty dang high. I think the problem that I have is that it's like a casual game. It's really easy and not that challenging. The graphics are good, the storyline's alright, the characters are great, and the overall presentation is good. It's just that it feels more like a movie, and you're just living this Indiana Jones-esque type of experience. You know, you're just kind of going through the different set pieces and movie set pieces that the game offered with Uncharted 2. So it's a great game. It's just that ranking number 18 is a little too high for me. Like, wow, like number 18 of all time? Like, really, you couldn't think of a more fun like game? You know, Dead Space. Hello, like Dead Space, Saints Row 2, Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Like, there's a lot of other great games that's more fun to me than Uncharted 2. Uncharted 2 was good, don't get me wrong, but number 18? Alright, number 19. Number 19 is Resident Evil 4. You guys know how I feel about this. RE4 is good. A little overrated, though. Number 19, I can understand why it's number 19. I get it. I understand why people rank it so high, because it was very influential. It was very different from the other Resident Evil games that came out. It was sort of the first of its kind, you know. And then Dead Space came out, like Dead Space 2. and Cold Fear, you know, these other titles that kind of ripped it off. But I felt like Dead Space was better. You know, I like the Dead Space franchise a little bit better than Resident Evil 4. So RE4 was good. I can understand why it's number 19. I can see why people would really love it. But for me, it was one of the top 30 on the PS2 for sure. And I'm sure on the GameCube it's, you know, one of the top titles on the GameCube. But I just don't. I wasn't in love with it as much as other people were. I thought there were flaws in the game, like, you know, I couldn't stand the Ashley character. I couldn't stand the damsel in distress factor in it. I thought that was super annoying. I was so annoyed. You know, I wanted it to be taken away, and she would have gotten disposed of. I didn't care about her being in peril and danger. Like I was so sick of her because she was useless. She was a damsel, a dummy in distress. Alright, coming in at number 20. Number 20 is Batman Arkham City. You guys know my experience with this title. I already talked about this multiple times, you know what I mean? This was in my top 30 PS3 games of all time. It's probably the best Batman game of all time, that I personally played anyway. Arkham City was great. It was a great, you know, comic book based video game. It was really influential. It was a solid title, great open world experience. A little high on the list. Number 20 is a little too high for me because I just feel like it's good. It's just that you know what to expect after a while, and I'm not a big fan of the Batman like franchise. I'm not big into it. I'm more of I like other stuff. I like other comic book characters, and you know, even something like a Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man 2 to me was a really amazing comic book based character. I would probably pick Spider-Man 2. Yeah, I like Spider-Man 2 better than Arkham City. Overall, if I had to choose between the two, yeah, Spider-Man 2 was more fun because of the whole swinging through the the big cities and the big buildings and everything. So I would pick that over, you know, Arkham City. Arkham City was good though. It's probably the best Batman game of all time. So I can understand why people love it so much. And it does have a lot of characters. It's got a ton of villains, and you know, Harley Quinn and the Joker and so many other, like, countless characters from the Batman mythos. So they really took their time to create an enjoyable title. I just felt like after a while I got bored with the game. I got bored with it, and I just didn't want to play it anymore after a while because I felt like, okay, this was good, but after a while I just got tired of doing the same thing. You know, it was fun for like the first, like, you know, 10, 11 hours that I played it, but after a while I'm just like, okay, I've had my fill with Arkham City. Like, that was good. You know, I don't need to complete it. I don't need to beat it anymore. So Arkham City is a very good game. I don't know about, you know, being number 20. Number 20 I think is a little too high for me. Alright, so I'm going to end it off there at number 20 because I actually want to divide it up this particular video because there's a lot of other games on here, and I feel like this is going to be one of those lists where I'm going to be focusing on every game. There's going to be a lot more games that's from different consoles and different platforms. It's not just a single system this time. And I feel like a lot of these games I'm going to have a lot more thoughts about it and more opinion about it. I can't just, you know, this is going to be a longer series. It's going to be, you know, a longer video. I feel like if I did everything all at once in a single vid, it's going to be like 5 hours long. So I'm going to divide it up, but probably by, you know, every 20 games. So this is going to be the first set, part 1, from 1 to number 20. So this is it for this episode of the Review Space. Next time I'm going to be talking about number 21 all the way up to, I guess, number 40. Yeah, 21 to 40, I think, the next one. So that's going to be in part 2, and hopefully I get through this entire 100 video games by Metascore from Metacritic.com. So thank you guys for watching this episode of the Review Space. Check out the channel for more videos, and yeah, you know, subscribe and all that good stuff. Click on the bell button for notifications. And until next time, peace.